Hello Legacy League, it is I again, Valerie Ling, coming to you live. I wanted to share something that actually came up in a session today. It wasn't a therapy session, it was actually a burnout prevention session with someone that I have been seeing. Apparently, I thought it was for 4 years, but apparently much longer than that. Hi. And this person initiated sessions with me, actually not for therapy, but because they were in a profession where it was prone to burnout. Hey Naomi, thanks for joining me. And what we talked about was so profound that I actually wanted to bring it to you. It builds actually on the thing that I was sharing yesterday, which had to do with, hey Emma, hey, good evening. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. I'm just going to map it out what we talked about. And it's part of that whole thinking of emotional exhaustion in the burnout space, right? That comes from actually just having a confusion of our roles. Like, are we, how do we actually interact with our team members or our colleagues when we're also responsible for, if you're in a business, making sure that things happen, and we can't always be nice. So as this client of mine was talking about what was in their world, I started to draw this, and then we fleshed it out a little bit. And so let me share that with you. Builds on what I was talking about yesterday. Let me see if this works. So I was talking about the different types of trust that we have. Okay, so trust. Let's see if you can see that. I talked about personal, then I talked about professional, and then I talked about positional. And what we were talking about today is like, oh, I feel mean, or I just don't get that person. How can they, work that way when actually in person they're fine? And then we get all in a muddle as to, are we friends? Are we not friends? How do I actually engage with this? So what I talked to her about today was, I said, okay, let's look at these 3 areas of trust and how it relates to your situation. So personal trust. That's got to do with what you know of the person, just in terms of how they relate to other people, their honesty, their integrity, consistently, are they the sort of person that, if they did the wrong thing, they said sorry, just personal trust. So how do you actually trust someone? Well, it's actually through frequent engagements, not necessarily social when you're in the workplace, but just through interacting with them, at the coffee cart, going to lunch together, how they conduct themselves, right? So you can figure out how much you can actually trust a person to be consistent. Professional trust has got to do with basically what I said before in the last video, how they actually conduct the technical parts of their self. The way that they practice, the way that they handle their patients, the way that they handle your admin, right? Can you actually trust them to be consistent and integrated as professionals? And then comes positional trust, which is if they're in if they're in leadership, how do they lead? Are they doing it consistently? Are they showing up? Are they taking ownership? If they are not a team leader but a follower, are they open to new ways of doing things? Are they adaptable? Can you trust that they've got your back? The positional trust. And as we were talking, what came clear was that with these 3 things, what connects them up is also how aligned we are in our values, all right? How aligned we are in terms of things like honesty, transparency, integrity, right? So those are values as well, but it's got to do with when we're interacting with one another and relying on these different places of trust, to what extent are we actually going to be authentic, right? That's the honesty, transparency, and integrity. And as we were talking, we then were looking at the situation that this person was in, and they were having a particular difficulty with, let's just say it was someone who was in charge of them, right? So they're both, let's say, department heads, if you like. and both needing to negotiate space together to figure out how they're going to put a project forward. Now, we were looking and saying, okay, where are you negotiating from? Which trust circle are you actually needing to really be clear about with this person in the relationship that you're in? Well, positional trust. Do you have a degree of positional trust that this person has been working with you as a department head in a way where they're treating you as a peer, as an equal? There's conversation, there's dialogue, these values are being enacted. So is there positional trust? Hi, Kim. How are they actually dealing with their subordinates? How are they leading? Do you trust the way that they're leading? What can you see? What evidence do you have? And the answer in this particular case was, well, not really. Actually, when I actually come to think about it, I thought I was just not liking them. We'll come back to that in a minute. No, actually, when I think about it, if I were to just break that down to a positional level of trust, I guess I've got some evidence that I've got a problem there as well. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. What is it about that positional trust that is an issue for you? How about professional trust? Them as just the technician, right? So let's say this person is a physiotherapist, let's say, and in a hospital, let's say, and the issue really is coming from the two of them being department heads and trying to work together. But how about professional trust? Is that way? And then we was like, no, actually, we're quite aligned in our treatment philosophy, the way that this person handles their patients. I really, would feel very comfortable and okay trusting patients into that space. Okay. So the trust that you're actually really querying is positional trust. Well, what about personal trust? And they're like, oh my goodness. When we go out for drinks and things like that, it just doesn't jive for me. Okay, fine. So you're not going to be collegial and collaborate when you don't have to, but you've got to figure this out. Which position of trust have you been working out of? And as we got talking, we realized that this person was actually trying to move the negotiation and the conversation from this space and starting to feel like they weren't being authentic to themselves, because they realized that, I don't want to, have coffee with this person and talk about the project, or I really don't want to have to be in their space quite a lot. Am I being mean? Am I being, is that really unprofessional? And we thought, well, it looks to me like you actually need to clarify this trust bubble. That's where you're coming from, not from here. What do you need to do to clarify this trust bubble? And we worked through that. And really, once we'd gone through that, it was evident that there were things that she could see that in the positional space, there was evidence that, okay, there are some positive things happening, but it's really just isolated to these two areas. I need to have some further conversations with them about whether or not we are working effectively together as department heads, because the trust in this particular area is impacted. So I thought it was a rather helpful exercise to think about it, because when we are in a leadership position, we feel like we've got to work this space a lot, especially in a small business environment or a small team. We feel like we've got to be authentic as a human being and share out of our personal experience and needing to connect with people. But actually, so long as we are interacting with them really from a values point of view, in other words, you don't have to share about your heartache with your husband, or your heartache, what's happening with you with your kids, but you are sharing from a space of being authentic, in terms of being interested in what they're doing, interested in their thoughts, in their opinions. So, interacting with people from that space. Then the other two circles, whether it's professional trust or positional trust, really then is the place that focus point of needing to work out of comes. Does that make sense? Let me just see if I'm having any comments here. Got a bit of an itchy nose now. So remembering that you are likely to be the same person in those three spaces. In fact, that's a good thing if we can integrate, but not feeling like we're a meanie or we're being a fake or a phony if we disagree, as in, you know, you're being, it's personal. No, you might actually just need to be clarifying where your trust positions are in these two bubbles. What are your thoughts? I didn't read a book about this. I didn't read a research paper about this. It just came to me as I've been trying to work out with my own burnout prevention clients, some of the emotional exhaustion that they feel when the dynamics of a team are very, very close and it feels like everything needs to come out of a personal space. How can we build strengths in these two spaces as well? I'll just hang around for a little bit and see if you've got any comments, people. What time is it? Almost 9 o'clock where I am. Any questions? I'm imitating someone. Questions or comments, people, my friends, my legacy league, before I leave thee? All right. I don't see any typing happening. So on the replay, perhaps. All right. Good evening, everyone.